One of the real advantages of electric cooperatives membership is having a voice in our state's energy future.
Not a week goes by without important energy issues making headlines. These are issues that need to be discussed. And you should know that as policies are being developed, the cooperatives are looking out for our members, advocating what's best for you.
We are your friends and neighbors.
We are your local electric company.
The electric cooperatives.
We are Arkansas.
And welcome to the program. I'm Roby Brock. The federal government shutdown by no means helped the financial markets this past week, although the damage was not as bad as some may have predicted. Joining me to talk business is Chris Harkins, Senior Vice President and Managing Director at Delta Trust Investments. Chris, as always, good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Roby. Happy to be here.
We did see the Dow, the S&P 500, the NASDAQ all took hits at various points this week. Not unexpected with the gridlock in Washington, D.C. and the fact that the shutdown is a negative on the economy. I mean, it's definitely is taking payroll out of the economy. It's causing some businesses to be disrupted. Was it what you expected?
Sadly, yes. I don't know if it's good news that we've been here before or if it's sad, but and we were talking about this a little bit a second ago. If you look at experience of investors and how they react, you would hope, and I think we've seen some evidence of it, where their skin is getting a little thicker. And since we've been down this road about a year or so ago, I think they're assuming this will last a week or two, and then we get right into back to the market fundamentals. So, you know, not too surprising this week, but if it lasts a week or two longer, then we're talking about something a little bit thicker, a little bit more structural.
And I have read, and I want to get your take on this, that there will be fear if this is prolonged that the economy will suffer, that we could trigger another recession, whether it's a large recession or a small recession is debatable, but it clearly could take us over an edge and into a direction that we don't want to go if it's prolonged.
Right. I mean, I think what's interesting is I think yesterday, day before, we had a group of Wall Street executives. They went to Washington, talked to the Hill, trying to get to the president to tell him how important it is for us not to do this, because this is a global effect. If investors globally and domestically here in the U.S., if they feel this lack of confidence that we can't get our act together, we can't pay our bills, they will begin to sell government bonds. That raises interest rates. And the stock market will be skittish. It's already skittish to begin with. You'll see pressure to sell at that point. So the longer this lasts, 2 weeks, maybe a month, no one knows, but we really don't want this to last more than a couple of weeks, because then it gets into the system, slows down the economy. Then you're talking about some real fundamental issues at that point.
We're going to move on to some more of those fundamentals in a second, but I want to take a little bit of a historical look first. This last quarter, and we're at basically the 9-month mark in the calendar year for how the stock markets have performed, and particularly some Arkansas stocks. And we've seen some good news, some bad news. What's your big takeaway in terms of Arkansas stock performance at this point in the year?
Hey, Roby, you guys did a great job of covering this. I think 10 out of the 15 larger public trade stocks in Arkansas were up. Right now we have 10 stocks out of the 15 or so that are at or near their 52-week high. So the good news is for Arkansas-based stocks, they're having a really good year. The bank stocks are, for a variety of reasons, earnings and also a lot of merger and takeovers. The trucking industry, same thing, earnings and takeover.
Right.
So we're right in the middle of a real interesting time in Arkansas. Publicly traded stocks are certainly a bellwether of the economy overall. And plus we have some really unique, powerful stories locally on the banking front, and trucking point that have had extraordinary earnings this year.
All right, let's talk about what happens if we see this government shutdown continue. It is going to start bleeding into a debate about the debt ceiling, and that is where we hit very dangerous territory if you talk to anybody who has some perspective on this. So much larger, looming on the horizon, this debt ceiling debate. Later this month, we're going to hit the capacity for the government to borrow at $16.7 trillion.
Yeah, with a T.
Yeah, that's just what profits at Delta Trust, I think.
Yeah,
so
you're being too generous.
What is the fear if things do hit this point? What is the big fear in terms of what the investment community, what the financial community is worried about if this debt ceiling debate can't get resolved, or if it goes the way of what we're seeing?
What you're certainly going to see is this lack of confidence. The debt ceiling has been building for a few decades now, but really at a much larger level the last couple of 5 to 10 years. That's an issue that's been ongoing. So when we have these things that happen this week where there's a shutdown, it reminds everyone we have this massive deficit and needs to be addressed. What we'd hope for, of course, is they have had a year to debate this, and they've waited till the 11th hour, which they did essentially the last time. But clearly, if this goes on a little bit longer, I mean, if it goes over a month, let's say, then you're talking about some real confidence issues, not only among the consumers sector, which are investors, but the larger pool of money going into investments in the stock market, our pension funds, large, high net worth individuals, they will begin to probably start pulling money out. We saw a little bit here. I'm not worried about this week. It's not fun when it goes down, but it's expected. But we could see some real pressure on the seller side.
You can recover from what you've seen in this past week. We're talking about going to the point where the recovery is much longer. Exactly,
because there comes a point where you are literally messing with some structural fundamental things as far as the economy. Yes, it's the government, but there's a lot of other people involved, a lot of other things involved.
All right, he's Chris Harkins with Delta Trust Investments. Always good information, good insight. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Roby.